Good evening. We here at LSTV have gathered our panel again following tonight's BBC Look North production, a live debate about young voters. And we wanted to discuss some of the issues in further detail, hear from some of our voters who are undecided about how they'll be voting in the general election on June the 8th, about whether they could be swayed by some of the hottest topics that matter to young people. So first up, we're going to be talking to India. India, what really struck you from that debate? What stood out? What have you really been interested in? And what would you like to ask the rest of our students here?
As I mentioned in the debate, something that has really struck a chord with me, and obviously I think most of us in the room, is the debate over tuition fees. I know that Labour are planning on scrapping them, and in theory that does sound like a great idea, but realistically, I know they plan on taxing, but I can't see how that's going to be enough money to support our very kind of intense and complicated university system, and whether it's going to be able to support the number of people who want to go to university, because whether or not the places will remain available to everyone is something that's a question that's come up in my mind.
So let's hear from Rosie. Tuition fees, should students pay?
I personally agree with the idea that tuition fees should be scrapped. I feel like education is a right, not a privilege, and I know that there is discrepancy between people who can and can't go to uni based off the high tuition fees in combination with the high standards of living that come from things like university accommodation costs, the struggles of living in the big cities compared to where you live at home. And I just think that it really does exclude people, people who have come from more well-off families who can pay the tuition fees outright, who have the connections to get the students into better jobs quickly after university. I just think that it is exclusionary, and I think that something should be done to tackle that, and I think that Labour has the best policy on that out of all the parties.
Thanks so much, Rosie. So, Amaj, coming to you next, do you agree?
No, I completely disagree, to be honest. I believe that having tuition fees at what they are at the moment is correct. I don't think it's excluding people from going to university. If you work hard, you get good grades, you'll get to university. And in terms of scrapping them, no, because I see education as something that if you're at university, you know that you have to work hard and you're paying for that. You know, your long-term career will help to pay for that in the future. So if someone isn't paying for university, they'll say, okay, I'll just go and try it out for a year. If it doesn't go according to plan, if I don't like it, then, you know, I can leave because I haven't paid for it. So I think, you know, it's a good thing that you pay for it, and therefore it allows you to really take full advantage of your time at university.
Okay, so over to you now, Lance. What do you think? Should students pay or not?
I think actually the system as we have it is a good enough system. It's not actually exclusionary, simply because if you look at the figures, more and more people like me from an ethnic minority background are going to university. More and more people from a poor background, again, I'm from a poor background, are going to university as well. I think actually what's been unfortunate is the way that it's been marketed by everybody as people are going to be paying $9,000 a year straight up, and I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes. I think also that is partly the fault of the government. I think it should it's a graduate tax. It's free at the point of use. You're not paying it back until you're earning enough, and I think there's nothing wrong with people being able, when you're earning enough, that being paid back. I think also there's an issue with free tuition fees being a tax cut for those who are on more money anyway, I think. So that's my 2 pence on it.
So Josh, you've had some differing opinions there about tuition fees. What would your view on that be?
I think tuition fees should be scrapped, and I also think this should be applied retrospectively, because it makes no sense to scrap tuition fees and then to make us the only people paying £9,000. I think I agree that education's a right. Education's a public good. It's not just something that benefits privately. And I want to move to a sort of society anyone, anywhere can improve themselves through education, because after all, that's what society should be for, is for everybody to be able to improve themselves and everybody to be able to access without prohibitive financial penalties like £9,000 tuition fees. We shouldn't be punished for bettering ourselves, and that's what tuition fees do, and that's wrong.
India, you've heard quite a few different answers to your question there. Has anyone particularly swayed you?
I think there's a lot to think about there. Everyone makes some good points. It's true that kind of £9,000 is a way of kind of the system does work at the moment, and the number of people going to university does keep increasing. But equally, it does seem unfair to better ourselves. We have to pay for it.
So Dave, what were your thoughts on that debate beforehand? Did anything really stick out to you as a pressing issue?
So, being someone who is still on the £3,500 scale, and having seen tuition fees rise kind of first-hand as a student, I have heard people be dissuaded by the increase in fees. I've had people come up to me and go, look, I'm not going because of this, and I've had to sit there and piece by piece explain it to them that this is a non-issue essentially, the actual rise itself at that point in time. It's something that can be addressed later. And I personally think that yes, we should be in some way paying for our education, but whether that's through giving back to society or whether it's through contributing money, I'm not entirely sure.
So moving on now to a new topic, were there anything else that you wanted to ask a question to our students about?
So the NHS, there's a lot of news stories going around. Local A&Es having an average of more than 4 hours waiting time. Mental health patients not really being seen in adequate times either. How do we sort out these waiting lists? What do we do to resolve this?
Annie, I'm coming to you here first.
I think the NHS is definitely a really big topic in this election, and it's something that I know that generally everyone in the country does care about. A lot of the issues that we're seeing in the NHS at the moment are as a result of cuts to social care. We've got an ageing population. I think whoever was in government at this time, it was kind of almost a ticking time bomb. They were going to face great difficulties in the NHS, but cutting social care at a time just before that has made things so much worse, because you've got people in hospital beds who can't go home because they've got nowhere safe to go. And I think I'm pleased that the party is kind of waking up to the issue of social care. Obviously we had the big U-turn last week, which was interesting to watch unfold. But I think separating the issues of the NHS and social care is actually quite a dangerous thing to do in terms of policy making.
Thanks, Annie. So Lance, I'm coming to you next.
I think it's actually quite simple. I think there needs to be more money in given to those services. I mean, as somebody who's been affected personally by multiple, having to turn up to multiple to A&E multiple times, not through any fault of my own, I might add, and having to wait hours and hours on end, and also due to sort of mental health funding not being, in terms of ADHD help or support here in Leeds, it's been absolutely dire, and we really do need more funding into the system. I think also one of the things that was mentioned during the debate, the sort of 1p on the pound income tax rise, I think is also a very, very good way of funding, being honest about the fact that we need to fund social care, health and social care, and ring fencing that money as well is also another good way of making sure that we know that that money is going into that particular area.
Thank you very much, Lance. So Josh, how important is the NHS to you?
It's massively important, and I agree with everybody else who's spoken that we need more money for the NHS. We need to integrate the NHS in social care. But also, I think it's important to talk about being preventative as well. People are going to the NHS with things like asthma or throat conditions because we have some of the worst air quality in Europe, and we need to sort that. We also have some of the longest working hours in Europe and in the world. And that's important because that is a knock on our diet, on our mental health, on our physical health, and we need to sort that, and we need to move to being not only funding our NHS for when people do get sick, but also to helping stop people get sick in the first place and move to being a much healthier society.
Thanks very much, Josh. So, Annie, I think you've got a point that you'd like to follow up with there.
Oh no, just in response to Lance, I'd agree that the NHS definitely needs more money, and sugarcoating the issue by saying we can tweak little things isn't necessarily going to solve the problem. I think the idea of taxing all the tax rates 1 penny more sounds very good, and I know a lot of people in this country are prepared to contribute more money to the NHS, but there is a big part of me which questions whether it's the fairest way to increase funding for the NHS. So if you're on a 20p tax rate, increasing by 1 penny, that's a 5% increase in the amount of tax you'll pay, whereas if you're on a 40p tax rate, increasing by 1 penny comparatively is a much lower amount. And I just question whether, if we're thinking about how we tackle the problem, 1 penny sounds like nothing, but actually, for people, the vast majority of people who are paying 20% tax rate, it actually makes quite a big difference.
Thanks, Annie. Well, Hugh, let's move over to get your thoughts on this. What do you think about this 1 pence per pound tax rate?
You know what? I didn't think I'd say this, but I actually agree with you there. I think the Conservatives have made... it's true though, because... And I'm surprised to hear you say that actually, because the Labour Party has always been the party of high taxes. Putting taxes up on people is not a way that makes the economy work. And when we have the economy that works, we're able to put funding into the NHS. That's why the Conservatives are promising an extra £7 billion into the NHS. I think 8 billion actually in the next Parliament. So yeah, let's cut the taxes. Let's do things that actually work for the real people, instead of constantly saying that, you know, we just keep raising taxes and that's okay because, you know, the government can't get its hand on how much it's spending on things. I'd also like to follow up. I mean, there's been a lot of mention of mental health, and I think it's important that we're now finally getting that conversation out there, because it's been ignored for so many years, and I think it's important that when you look at the proposals that the different parties are making, the Conservatives are the ones that are being most clear that we want another 10,000 staff working on mental health alone within the NHS, and so I think that's a really important issue, and I'm glad it's been raised by everybody here. Thank
you very much, Hugh. So, India. So, India. In the last year, we've had the country vote on one of the biggest changes to our... what am I saying? In the last year, India, we've had a vote on a very important decision, and the UK is now leaving the EU. Article 50... Words, help me. So India, in the last year, we've seen the UK vote to leave the EU. Brexit, it's going to be a massive defining issue in this upcoming general election. What does it mean to you? What would you like to know more about?
I think what's interesting is that the majority of our generation voted to remain, and we're leaving. Obviously, this is something we have to accept, but it's just very interesting, again, to see how it's going to be handled. My concern is that although it provides potentially more opportunity to create connections with the rest of the world, it's so important that we don't lose the connections we have. And there are so many people contributing to our society who have come from the EU, who have come from abroad, and it benefits them, it benefits us, so why are we trying to change that? And there's been no kind of straight answer about whether these people are going to be forced to leave or whether their way of life is going to have to change dramatically. And even small things like there's a border in Northern Ireland with Ireland that people have to cross every day to get back into Northern Ireland. And if that changes, and they have to have border checks and passport checks whenever they're trying to pop to the shops, that's going to affect their way of life completely. So on a small scale and a large scale, there are big changes that are going to happen.
Thanks, India. So Josh, let's hear from you first about your views on Brexit.
I don't want Brexit to happen, but obviously it's clear we must go ahead. I think there should be a ratification referendum. So once we've found out the deals and know the extent of the deal, then we all vote if whether we leave or not, or go back to the table. I think one of the things that's very, very important for me is to protect the freedom of movement, and I'm disappointed that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have both said they wouldn't protect freedom of movement. I'm Jewish, and my family have survived over the last centuries by crossing borders through Europe, and if we couldn't cross borders, then we'd not have survived, and I wouldn't be here today to talk about the importance of crossing borders. And so I'm in favour of I think we should fight for a Brexit that protects workers' rights and protects the freedom of movement and protects migration and protects environmental protections, because that's the important thing, I guess, and what I want from Brexit.
Thanks, Josh. Amaj, you were shaking your head at the idea of a ratification vote there. What does that say to you?
I don't understand the whole ratification thing. We voted to leave. I was a Remainer. I was very upset on the day when I realised we were leaving, but we made the decision. 50% of people, more than 50%, voted that yes, we're going to leave the European Union. And now having a ratification a couple of years later just to see, if we can get the best possible deal, and then say, actually, no, you know what, we didn't get the best deal, we'll just stay in the EU. I think I don't see how that can be possible. And I think, Theresa May has to really do well over the next couple of years to get us the best deal with the EU, and her compared to Jeremy Corbyn, I think she's really going to do well. So I look forward to seeing what she can do over the next couple of years.
Thanks very much, Amaj. Rosie, Brexit, is it a big defining issue, and do you agree with what you've heard about ratification votes?
I echo a lot of Josh's sentiments, I think, in terms of preserving the two key things of being workers' rights and freedom of movement. I do believe that just over 50% voted to leave, and that was the technical majority, so that's the democratic process. However, it was not a massive majority, and I think the fact that 48% decided that they want to remain should be taken into account in Brexit negotiations, which I don't think it has been so far. There's been a lot of empty rhetoric and token statements about red, white and blue Brexit, which mean nothing. The idea that Theresa May is some strong negotiator who is so much better than Jeremy Corbyn, I think is based on nothing so far. And it's not even either of them who would be chief in conducting the negotiations for Brexit. So I think this scaremongering tactic of using Jeremy Corbyn as this weak negotiator versus Theresa May, who can't even debate on live television, so how she's going to negotiate against other foreign leaders when she can't debate the leaders of the other political parties in this country, is just baffling to me. So I echo a lot of Josh's sentiments in what should be preserved, and I do agree that we are leaving the EU and that should be honoured because that was the majority, but I just think that it's not being handled very well right now under a Conservative government, and I think the scaremongering over Labour to do with it is just based on nothing.
Yeah, I do think that there is quite an obvious difference to most people between Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May. I mean, when you look at the way that she's gone forward with this so far, it's quite clear that she's got quite a coherent plan. That doesn't exist for Corbyn. You need to have a coherent plan to even know what it is that you want to achieve. Whether or not you achieve that, that's up for debate, but you have to have a plan. And we talk about the right workers' rights, things like that. Let's not scaremonger here. The Conservatives have it in their manifesto that they will not change that. Any rights guaranteed in the EU at the moment will be guaranteed. So that is not up for grabs. The final issue, people who are living here, I agree. We shouldn't be making them scared of their status. But once again, Theresa May went to the EU. She said, let's get this sorted out now. Let's sort this out. The EU said no. She's made clear that is her intention, and it will be in the negotiations. Both sides seem to want that. I think it'd be very, very surprising if people who are living here from the EU and people from the UK in the EU wouldn't be allowed to stay.
Lance, you've heard a lot of different views on that. Let's get your final opinion.
Yes, I mean, I think I'm going to have to come back to you on the whole ratification referendum. I do actually think it's a good idea. I mean, democracy doesn't end with just one vote. we need a chance to change our minds. Yes, we voted to leave, as was said. 48% to 52%. It's a small majority. I mean, I genuinely have no problem with us having a second referendum on it, because democracy doesn't end with one vote. But yeah, I think I have a lot more to say in Brexit. I could talk about Brexit till the cows come home, but I mean, I'll end it there because there's a lot more. But
Thank you very much, Lance. So we hear a lot about political apathy amongst young people, but as you can see, I'm surrounded by passionate young voters who will be heading out to their local polling station come June the 8th of this year. That's all from us here at LSTV, but thank you very much for watching, and do get out and vote on the 8th.